Hello and welcome along to Mondo Chelloveck movies. My name is John, and the other day I watched The Exorcist in 4K in full. So the reason why I'm making this second video, I'll link the first down below if you haven't seen it already, is because there's some conflicting reports about the picture quality on this release. When I previously checked this 4K out to see what the quality was like for my first review, I thought it looked really good. Now, then I heard a lot of people saying, well, this and that. So I thought, right, I'm going to go back and I watch this and give my sort of opinion on it now because I've watched it fully. Now, I'll be interested, before I tell you what I think of it, I'll be interested to know if you can just leave a comment down below to say, I thought it was a great transfer, I thought it was all right, I thought it was hit and miss, or I thought it was awful. It's a movie that I can really appreciate for how much of a kind of realistic movie this is. I've always said this movie is kind of one of the most realistic horror movies ever made. So from a filmmaking point of view, this movie is just exceptional. It ticks every box for me. It's a thinking man's horror, if that makes any sense. What I'm going to do with this video is I'm going to put some screenshots on here to sort of back up my claims of what I think of the picture quality. And what I was wanting to do was I'm trying to see if the things I'd heard bad about this transfer, I was going to see if I thought that they did exist and would they take me out of this movie. I did agree with some of the points that I've heard in some of the videos, but I'll tell you what I thought about those points kind of later on in the video. When I watched it, I had a great time with it, but I must admit, this time around, I didn't find it that scary. I think all the other times I've watched it, I've always found it to be a scary movie. And it is a scary movie, don't get us wrong, but it didn't really have the same effect it did on us when I watched it, say, the last time around. But I had a great time with it, and I really appreciated this movie. What I did was, when I put it on, I did some screenshots of things that I thought were really good about this movie. The bits that people were talking about saying that had this in it and that in it, I could see them. But if I add all them bits up in the running time of this movie, I don't even think they come to 1 minute of this movie. So, all right, those things are there, and I'll talk about them a bit later on, but you'd be surprised at how little it is in the movie. And for me, it didn't spoil the movie at all. It's so small a thing that you can actually, if you weren't focused on it, one of the things I completely missed anyway. So it's kind of one of them things. So my short answer to this movie is I thought this movie looked exceptional. And one of the best things about it was, apart from the colour, now you've got to remember when I do my screenshots on here, I do it with my phone at night. And sometimes the colours on my phone will enhance what you're seeing. Because sometimes when I look through the viewfinder on my phone, I can see that this looks a little bit more colourful than what I'm actually seeing with my eyes. So you've got to bear that in mind. It's a representation and a faithful one. If I want to do a faithful one, I'll be here for hours just trying to get one screenshot. So I haven't got the time for that. So that's why I've done it on my phone. So take them with a colour, take them with a pinch of salt. But also remember that the sharpness in this movie is super sharp, I find, in most places. I think that when it gets a little bit soft, I think that's just inherent in the actual film stock. You can't do anything about that. If you were going to shorten it up, it would look odd. So, like I say, the first thing I noticed about this movie, we'll talk about colours later, is the sharpness. And I'm going to put some screenshots on, so expect a lot of screenshots in this review, and you can see for yourself. And I do hope that you see what I'm saying, that this movie is 99% super sharp. Another thing I found with this movie, and I'm going to leave this picture in as a thumbnail, and that's going to really confuse a lot of people, isn't it? Is that the outdoor scenes look really realistic. This VHS actually is the first time I got this movie. I think this is from Finland, and this one here is a proper legitimate release. This was the only way you could buy it before it got released in the UK, and this is a great copy. I do think that it's got some burnt on subtitles. Unfortunately, I think it has. I can't remember. I have watched it for a long time. I do remember when I watched this, I was blown away by the quality. This is one of the best VHSs that I owned back in the day. And it was great when you used to get people come around the house and they look through your stuff and they go, hang on a minute, what's this? It looks like The Exorcist. And you pick it out and you go, well, it is The Exorcist. And you go, what? The original Exorcist, not Exorcist 2? And I went, no, no, it's The Exorcist, and it is absolutely brilliant. So that was a conversation piece. And if you notice, this is slightly damaged here, and also the box is cracked. Now, this is how it came to me, and it was obviously shipped from there. It was by my good contact, Kev, John Hall. I remember Kev, the lineman from Viney, and he got me this for £30. And to be honest, it's not a bad price to pay for something that was just completely not available in the UK. Now, fast forward all this time here, and you've got a 4K here for £20. Now, it shows you sometimes you think that maybe even 4K is a bit of an expensive medium. There can be in some respects. But also, what you've got to understand is that back in the day, sometimes we were paying big bucks. And I mean, £30 back in the day, it was £30. And to get these things in like a format that was pretty much kind of nearly there for the way it was. It wasn't a bad VHS, it wasn't a copy, it was legitimate. But of course, that was the only way you could get it, and it would have burnt on subs probably. And then here we are, God knows how many years later, probably about 40 years later, and I'm getting something here for £20, which I would consider to be the best version of The Exorcist now. So let's get into the parts that people were talking about to say there was a problem with. Now, the subway scene is the one that gets mentioned all the time when people say there's a problem with it. Now, what I did was I went back to the Blu-ray. Well, as Blu-ray is available on here, it's the same one as this one. I went back to the Blu-ray and I took some screenshots of that scene. There was some talk that the lights didn't look right. They looked kind of have this glow around it, which looked a bit unnatural. Now, when I put this on, the same was you could be said for the Blu-ray. You could see that sort of halo thing a bit on this here. Now I'm thinking if you're going to get like a bit of a boost on your colours and your gambit and everything to do with that, maybe these things get highlighted, maybe they get brought to life. Now, yes, they are there. I'm not saying they're not. The screenshots will come up to show you. I'll put the Blu-ray on first and then I'll put the 4K on second. That shows you that there's something around the lights. But it is kind of on the Blu-ray as well, just not as pronounced. Now, for me, that scene there, when they're down in the subway, which is a great scene actually, it lasts for literally seconds. And it doesn't make me think anything less of the movie. Another thing that was talked about was the fact of colour bleed. Now, colour bleed for me is a thing that's all right, it's there, when I watched this and I watched that clip actually that had the color bleed in it, I didn't recognize anything on it. But when I freeze framed this one and also the 4K, you could see the color bleed. But the color bleed is literally on the screen for about 5 seconds. What I'm saying is that these things that might scare you away from the 4K of The Exorcist, you really want to know that they're just in for seconds a piece. And all right, they're there, but for me, it doesn't seem to happen in every. If it happened in every single color scene, then you would have thought, "My God, this is bad." But it doesn't. It doesn't happen in them at all. So also the exorcism scene at the end, which I thought looked absolutely brilliant, had lovely color on it. The detail was there, but when you get to Father Merrill's face, you can see that he's got a lot of makeup on. Now, don't forget that Max von Sydow, he wasn't young, but he wasn't as old as Father Merrill, and he had some stuff on his face. Now, if you look at the Blu-ray and then you look at the 4K, you can see that the 4K you can see more details of this sort of makeup, which makes him quite smooth. Now, when I was watching that, I was taking a look at Father Karras as well to see what he looked like, to see if he was looking a bit waxy, because that's when you kind of say, wow, it's the faces that show up when you get a DNR scene. That's how you get the really big problems with the faces, and it takes you right out of the film. For me, I couldn't see any sort of lack of detail in Father Karras's face, but Father Merrill had that sort of smoothing and that kind of weirdness because of the makeup he had on his face. Now, I'm not excusing the fact that it does look a bit smooth. I'm not saying it doesn't, but it doesn't look like there's been any DNR for me on that scene. Remember, this is just my personal choice. So when I went through this movie, I did sort of focus on those scenes that were coming up. This sounds a bit daft. It did take me out of the movie, but didn't take me out of the movie what I was seeing. I was just trying to focus on this and trying to get screenshots and all that. So the next time I can't wait to go back to this and then not have to do that. Sometimes when you're reviewing a disc, you're kind of more looking at the bits and pieces behind the scenes and you're not really looking at the movie. So the next time I watch this on the theatrical cut, I'll be just paying attention to the movie. I do think this is a stellar release. The soundtrack on here is phenomenal. It's Dolby Atmos, so do know you're going to get everything. Getting back to Dolby Atmos soundtrack, the bit that freaked me out in this movie, that always freaks me out in this movie, is the spider walk. Now, Keith from Euphoria Pictures, linked to his channel down below, he was saying that you do hear the sort of noise of the footsteps, kind of, from Reagan before you actually see her. Now, I kind of forgot that well, I remember him saying this, but I kind of forgot where this part was in the movie. And all of a sudden, when the scene came up, you heard the kind of footsteps and scuffling before you saw this thing, and it kind of freaked me out in a way. And I went, wow. And the other bits that used to scare me didn't really scare me in here. So this movie delivered to me. I really enjoyed it. I knew I had to watch it in the month of October, been saving it up for this, and I had a great time with it. So, like I say, down below, tell me what you think of this transfer. Do you think this is a great transfer, like I do? Do you think that the things that are mentioned in people's reviews when they say there's some bad stuff about it, do you think that's got any foundation? Do you think it's there? I do see that the colour bleed's there. I do see that the lights in the subway are a bit more pronounced. But for the length of time it's on the screen, there's no way that this takes it out of the movie. And obviously I was concentrating on the exorcism scene at the end of the night, at the end of the movie, but for me, it was only because I was kind of staring at it that I was taking a bit more notice of the faces. I wouldn't have thought that if I wasn't watching it for that. So that's my view on The Exorcist 4K transfer after fully watching it. And I think that it's one of the best things I've seen in horror. Well, one of the best horrors I've seen. Although I didn't find it as scary this time around. So, anyway, on that note, thanks for watching. You take care, and I will see you in the next video. Cheers.